Our subject here again today is how journalism destroyed itself. You didn't hear part one, where I went over points 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you go and check that before you listen to this one so you have the full context of where we're coming from here. Let's start at point number 4. Here's what happened next. After where we stopped on point 3. Everyone started leaning heavily to one side. When I say everyone, I mean all of the media. So we're picking up on point number 4 here. What happened is everyone started leaning heavily to one side, and this caused the public to pick sides. So when I say everyone, I'm referring to the platforms that publish what we used to call news and what we used to call, and some people are still holding on to calling, journalism. All the platforms, NBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, etc., they started leaning heavily to one side or another because they saw it on social media. Somebody, let's say, is heavily, staunchly liberal. They would post a lot of content that supported the liberal talking points or trash the conservative talking points and just lean in one direction because they're just an independent citizen with an independent opinion, which is what individual people do all the time. And again, social media, let's remember what social media is not some big Wizard of Oz person behind the screen. Social media is just us. It's just me and you, all of us, publishing what we want to say and influencing other people with the stuff that we put out there. The journalism industry and the news industry decided that they needed to compete against everyday people and try to start doing what we were doing instead of sticking to doing what they do. And again, this is the mistake that I emphasize heavily in the first part of this series. So what happened is networks like Fox started leaning like to the right, for example. CBS, NBC, ABC started leaning to the left. People started noticing this. This is where the problem began. Is not that it was that they were leaning, but what the problem was that people started noticing it. See, if they were leaning and nobody cared, then it wouldn't be an issue. But people started noticing, people meaning citizens, and the citizens, that's us, we started picking sides regarding which news networks we would follow and listen to based on hearing what we wanted to hear. And the network started giving us more and more of what we wanted to hear. Now, why would the networks do this? Because again, as I just told you on point number 3, they were copying what social media does. Any of you who uses social media, I'm assuming that's everybody, whether we're talking Facebook, TikTok, X, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and all the other apps. How do the algorithms work? You know how they work. If you go on one of those apps and you watch a couple videos on YouTube, they're going to show you a bunch of stuff that is similar to the stuff that you've been watching because they believe that's going to keep you on the app. So for example, if I go on YouTube right now on the homepage, I see some stuff about money making. I see some stuff about what's going on in the political election. I'm recording this about a week before the 2024 election. I see some motivational stuff. I see some podcast shows. I see some, I don't know why they're showing me that one. This is one of them. I don't know what that is. There's some other money making stuff. There's some stuff about Trump. There's some stuff about Kamala Harris because I've been looking at those things. And they're showing me more of these because these are kind of things that I have been looking at lately or I've been looking up lately. These are the things that are showing up on my feed. The point being, social media feeds tend to show you more of what you've already been paying attention to. So if you pay attention to a whole lot of left-leaning things, then your social media feed will just keep providing more liberal stuff that supports your view. Why does social media do this? Because they understood that, well, they understand, and you should understand, that social media's business model is to usurp as much of your time as possible. So the more of their time, more of your time they get, the higher prices they can charge advertisers to spend money to get your attention. That social media business model is to keep you on the app as long as possible. So publishers like me, we get rewarded by social media for publishing content that keeps people like you on the apps. If my material causes you to leave the app, I get penalized. If my material keeps you on the app, I get rewarded. Long story short. So social media decided, okay, well, we know that showing Mike more conservative leaning stuff is going to keep Mike on the app, or we're just going to keep showing him more of what he wants to hear. And the journalism industry, which is supposed to do the exact opposite of this, not telling you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, they decided we're going to do the same thing that social media does. Let's just give people more of what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. And at this very moment, this is the inflection point right here, everybody. This is when they abandon the truth. They stopped telling people the truth, which is what we wanted, what we need to hear, and they started giving people the dopamine, which is what they want to hear. That is the major difference between where journalism was and where journalism is. They stopped focusing on giving you the truth, which might go down a little bit difficult because you don't want to hear it all, and they started giving you the dopamine, which is whatever it is that you want to hear. So you hate the Republicans, okay, we're going to give you more and more material to cause you to hate the Republicans. You hate the Democrats, we're going to give you more and more material that causes you to hate the Democrats and further verifies and validates your hatred of the Democrats, even if it's based in complete nonsense. We're going to give it to you anyway because we know that's what you like. And if we keep giving you what you like, just like we see on social media, you're going to keep watching our stuff. Therefore, we can keep charging advertisers. Therefore, everybody can keep their jobs. Therefore, we all get to keep making money. Any of you who's ever looking at anything that involves business on any level and you're not quite sure how it's happening and you're not quite sure how this makes sense or why it's even happening, there's a simple 3-word phrase you can use over and over and over again that will help you make sense of anything you see in life. Follow the money. Follow the money. If you're on social media and you see a person who seems to be living a certain type of lifestyle and they're doing things that seem to appear to cost a lot of money and you're not quite sure how they're supplying it, how they're supplying themselves with this lifestyle, follow the money. All right, the money's being supplied somehow, some way, from somewhere. If they're telling you the truth, follow the money. You want to know why news organizations and media organizations do the things that they do when it seems to not make sense, as I've explained to you already, not even halfway through this series? Follow the money. This is why they're doing it, because they're trying to keep their money or they're trying to make more money. So when people started noticing this, again, the networks just leaned harder to one side or another because they're trying to be like social media. The problem with giving people what they want to hear, or when people are going and looking for what they want to hear, is that you are no longer subscribing to the truth. You have to abandon truth to tell people what they want to hear. As I've already told you, the reason why I'm not in politics is because I would have to tell you what you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. And that will mean I can't tell you the truth. And I like telling people the truth. I like keeping it real with people. When I ask people who are in my program, so when I'm talking my people who have invested the most money with me and worked with me the longest, and I ask them, what is it about my approach and what I do that you value the most? What people say, the common answer that I get over and over and over again is, Dre, you keep it real, you try to be as objective as you can, and you're no sugarcoating, no bullshit. Now, see, if I start giving you what you wanted to hear, I would have to abandon all 3 of those points. I can't keep it real if I'm telling you what you want to hear. I can't not sugarcoat things. If I'm telling you what you want to hear, I have to sugarcoat everything. And I can't be objective if I'm telling you what you want to hear. I got to be subjective. I got to tell you what you want to hear. All right, that's literally what subjectivity is about. I'm telling you what you want. See, social media allows you to subscribe to what makes you feel good. That's the whole purpose of social media. All right, on my social media feeds, I don't scroll through feeds on any of these apps, except YouTube is the only one where I'll look through things because I will actually consume things on YouTube. Other apps I don't, or X is the other one that I do. X has a little bit of different algorithm. Also because X is controlled by a guy who seems to be pretty staunchly and cleanly conservative, Elon Musk. So it's a little bit different than all the other social media apps. But on these apps, they just show me more of the stuff that I've already shown that I'm interested in. They don't ever show me, hey, you usually look at this stuff, or what do you think about this stuff? They never do that because they know they might lose my attention. If they lose my attention, they lose their money. Follow the money. Everybody understand this? I think all of us can agree that regardless of your leanings politically, if you have any, many networks out there lean heavily to one side or another, and they have completely abandoned even the facade of objectivity. They're not even trying to be objective anymore. They're not even trying to act like they're being objective anymore. Now, why this is because the networks are in the business of making money. They're not any longer in the business of the truth. They used to be in the business of truth, and they were able to make money by giving you truth. But when social media jumped in, telling the truth became less popular. They couldn't keep making money telling the truth, so they had to choose a new business model. That's what they decided to do. I understand it's a tough decision they had to make, but that's what they did. There was a editor for the New York Times. I don't remember the guy's name. I believe he was working for the New York Times, if I'm remembering correctly. One of the things that he talked about shortly after Donald Trump got into politics, and it was obvious that he had a lot of momentum and might win the election, might have been either before he won 2016 or after. This editor said, we decided as a news organization that the way we covered Trump, even though we knew it was going to be different than the way we covered every other politician, it was justified because he was such a different person that we had to produce a completely different slant on how we talked about him. Because if we talked about him normally, the way we did every other president and presidential candidate, it wouldn't kind of get the point across to the people the way we wanted to get the point across. So he admitted openly that we changed the way we did journalism to cover Donald Trump because he was such a different person. We had to take a different approach to how we talked about him. He literally said that. And he wasn't trying to say it in so many words, but he was admitting that they abandoned journalism because of Donald Trump. So this is where we can put some quote unquote, blame on Donald Trump because his presence caused a lot of these platforms to go even further into what they were already doing. They didn't start this when Donald Trump came around, but they accelerated the process when he came around. His presence caused the acceleration of the process. And what did we just talk about a couple of days ago? Contributing factors and determining factors. His presence was a contributing factor, but it was not the determining factor, because they could have just said, you know what, we're going to report on this guy how he is. And if he happens to be very influential, well, hey, so be it. All right? It's not our job to determine who wins the election. It's our job to report on what's happening, not to become the news, but to report the news. And the media platforms decided they wanted to become the news instead of reporting it. And this is where we are still to this very day. As you're listening to this, that's where we are. See, they used to be able to tell the truth and make money. Now they couldn't do both, or at least not as much money. You can still make money telling the truth, but you couldn't make as much. And I just told you how big these platforms are and how much money is at stake and how many jobs are at stake and careers are at stake and livelihoods are at stake. People have a lot of money vested into these companies. These are public companies worth a lot of money. And if they start losing money, that can hurt a whole lot of people. They said, we're not going to do that. So again, follow the money, ladies and gentlemen. You want to make sense of stuff, follow the money. Now, again, you can't take the same money, make the same money rather, telling the truth, because the truth is not as exciting as telling people what they want to hear. Social media is always exciting. Why? Because if you're bored by one thing on social media, you can swipe and go to the next thing on social media. See, when someone's telling you the truth, you can't swipe. Ain't no swiping on the truth. That's the issue. See, if there's nothing exciting on Facebook, you get on Instagram. Nothing exciting on Instagram, you get on TikTok. Nothing exciting on TikTok, get on YouTube. Nothing exciting on YouTube, get on X. You can just keep scrolling through apps till you find something interesting. And you can keep scrolling through the content on those apps. But see, if someone's telling you the truth, there's nowhere to swipe. There's nowhere to go. There's no escape from the truth. There's only one truth. It's not like you can get alternative truths. There's only one truth. No such thing as my truth and your truth, by the way, in case any of you haven't heard me talk about that. There is no such thing as my truth and your truth. There is only the truth. I talked about that in episode number let me see where I found it, where I talked about my truth and your truth. It was episode number 2009. Truth is objective. All right, so whenever you hear somebody saying my truth, all right, they're already lying to you. What they're telling you is their opinion or their belief, and they're cloaking it behind truth so that you don't challenge them. That's what it means when someone says my truth. So any of you using that phrase, I just called you out. I'm talking about you too. No such thing as your truth. The truth is not proprietary. Everybody understand that? There is no proprietary truth. All right, there's just one truth. Truth is truth, bullshit's bullshit. And if you're not telling the truth, you're lying. All right, the truth is usually not very sensational. All right, and this is the problem that the media industry ran into. Moving on to point number 5. Today's topic, once again, is how the journalism industry destroyed itself. Number 5, what has happened now is that journalism has started to cannibalize itself. In other words, it's eating itself alive. Since the news networks, and I'm being very generous when I use the term news, since they can't report fairly anymore because their fans have been conditioned to not want to hear it. In other words, if you are on a conservative-leaning platform, they can't report anything or tell you anything that challenges the conservative points of view, because you will stop listening to their network, and that's going to cost them money. So they decided that they can't do that anymore. So now they have no choice but to stay in the lane that they have got themselves into. In other words, they peed in the bed, and now they got to lay there and sleep and piss. That's what media companies have done to themselves. Their fans can't bear to hear anything other than what they have been conditioned to hear, which is everything that they want to hear. There's a problem. It's like raising a spoiled child. All right, now the child's 12 years old and spoiled. It's too late to fix them now. You should have did that when they were 2 years old. Now they're 12, and now you're stuck with them. All right, now you got to deal with this person. That's where they're at. And it's not that journalism can't be done anymore. It's just that if they did actual journalism and did objective and fair reporting and told people the actual truth, they run into a problem. They'd be in the middle of both sides. They'd be serving nobody, pleasing nobody, and they would lose all of their audience, and a lot of these businesses would completely collapse under their own weight. So now they're stuck in the problem that they created because they responded to an externality, a circumstantial situation, in the wrong way. That's the mistake that they made. Again, they were the library who tried to compete with the strip club. Don't do it. That was the mistake that they made. And they're still making the mistake to this day, by the way. So you didn't miss the boat on this. You can look at it right now and you'll see. You can't have a big enough fan base to continually justify running these big businesses while maintaining your payroll if you told people the truth and you did objective journalism. In other words, journalistic newsrooms would become really small. They would be 10% of the size that they are right now because there would only be enough money to support that. The good news about that is that you would get only the best journalists will survive. They still be getting paid, but all the trashy journalists, all the ones who were just okay, they'd be out of business. They would have to go start a Substack or a podcast or something like that. Y'all know the drill. What happens here? I just saw someone who was working for the Washington Post. A lot of people in their newsroom got mad because the Washington Post as an organization declined to endorse a political candidate for the 2024 election. And a bunch of people were talking about this for a couple of days. And I saw someone who said that they used to work at the Washington Post, that they quit and they started their own Substack. And that's what happens when you're a journalist and you can't get a job being a journalist anymore. You can still do journalism. You just got to crowdfund it now, or not even crowdfund it, but go independent and make your own money directly from your audience. And if your work is any good, then the marketplace will tell you that it's good. It's one of the 12 work on your game commandments is the marketplace commandment. If your stuff is actually good, you can go out to the open marketplace and make money doing it. If you can't go out into the open marketplace and prove it, then you might not be as good as you thought you were. That's just how it is. That's how it works, folks. So anyway, these organizations could have just stuck to the journalism game. There would have been layoffs, there would have been pain, and there would have been some financial bleeding in the process, but they could have stayed in the journalism game. They decided to not stick to their principles of journalism and decided instead to chase the dopamine, which is what they did. And for the most part, they're catching it for a good amount. A lot of these companies haven't downsized too much. They're still downsizing, but not too much. Not as much as they would have had to had they actually stuck to journalism. So I guess you could say for them, that's a win financially, fiscally, business-wise. As I told you, these companies are so large, people are trying to protect their paychecks. And while, as I said, they, for the most part, survived, they did cut down on journalism departments. There are not nearly as many seriously good, worth their weight journalists in the game today as there used to be. They are not. They've gone away. You may notice that many people who used to be employed by these big companies to do actual journalism, they had to start their own platforms to keep up their work. And again, this happens not just in the news industry. People are talking about things like politics and the government, et cetera. ESPN, Entertainment Sports Programming Network, they've done the same thing. There's a really good basketball writer over there by the name of Zach Lowe, Lowe. I'm a fan of Zach Lowe. Have listened to his podcast, read a lot of his writings when he would write for ESPN. ESPN let him go. They fired him by, I suppose, not renewing his contract. In other words, firing him. And they kept and actually re-signed to a bigger contract a guy working there named Kendrick Perkins. Now, Kendrick Perkins used to play in the NBA. He was a role player, a solid role player in the NBA, won a championship with the Boston Celtics. And Kendrick has been on ESPN for a couple of years now, and he doesn't write anything. He's not a writer. He is not a journalist. He's a talking head. He's what you call a talking head. Talking head is a person you see on TV, you just see their face and you hear them talking. That's what they do, literally talking head. And Kendrick Perkins, his takes are not very well thought out. He does not think or speak like a journalist. He does not think or speak on an intellectual level. He's a basketball player who has an entertaining take. That's his thing, entertaining take that gets people to react to him via social media, and that draws a whole lot of attention. I'm telling you all that to tell you this. This is what works in journalism these days, quote unquote journalism. This is not journalism, but this is what it's become. What journalism used to be is people like Zach Lowe, really good writer, not sensational, not a person who draws a ton of attention on social media, but actually a good writer. People who actually sit down and fucking read, people like me, like Zach Lowe. Kendrick Perkins, on the other hand, is a guy who doesn't write anything. He has no articles. He's not writing columns. He does have a book under his name, but these days, someone having a book doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make you an intellect. There's a lot of people who have books that they didn't even write, and there's no substance within the books. Kendrick Perkins is the kind of guy who doesn't read books, let alone would you want to read one that he wrote. And he's that guy. And no diss to Kendrick Perkins on a personal level, but I think he'd probably agree with this if he heard it. And Kendrick Perkins is a talking head. He's very entertaining. He gets you reactive on social media. That's what works. You want to work in the news or journalism industries these days. They're not doing either one anymore, but that's what they still call themselves. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to do to have a job and keep a job. And if you're a writer, you're an intellectual, and you're offering people some actual meat and potatoes to think about, you got to do it on your own. That's the game. I told you all a long time ago. Let me see. I said this such a long time ago. I got to find the episode, and I've talked about entrepreneurship so many times in the past that I got to find the one where I said this. This was episode number. I got to go way back to find this episode because I said it so long ago that I knew it was coming. And I'm going to tell you all where it is. Let me see if I can find it. It was episode number 1209, 1209. 2,000 days ago, I told you soon everyone will be an entrepreneur. I told you all this in episode 1209 that this is coming, and it's still coming. Some of you still have full-time employment where you get a check every 2 weeks. Not for long. Not for long. Everybody's going to have to go out and kill anything you eat, and it's coming. I'm talking about in our lifetimes, it's coming. All right, it just happens to be happening to the journalism industry right now, but it's coming to every industry. Trust me, it's coming. Again, Zach was not sensational. He did very good work. He was a writer. Yet ESPN decided to keep the sensational people who have very little substance. Kendrick Perkins is very entertaining. He has very little substance. Those are two different things. And again, this is where the news industry has gone and is where it continues to go. This is why I told you in episode 1474, stop watching the news. All right, they offer no substance. Now they offer entertainment. Now, if you're interested in entertainment, go watch the news. They'll give it to you. Go turn on ESPN. They'll give it to you. Go pick up social media. You know how it works. They'll give you all the entertainment you want. If you want substance, you got to go look for it. You got to go find it now, because those people don't work at the big companies anymore. They're getting fired every single day. Substance no longer sells. Should I say that one more time? Substance no longer sells. I told you in episode number 2183 that substance is self-evident. One way you know somebody has substance these days is that they used to work for a big company and now they got to do it on their own because nobody buys substance anymore. That's one way. I told you in episode number 1620, you got to have a combination of style and substance to build an audience, because if you just go with substance, then you're only talking to such a small group of people. You got to have a little bit of style to go with it. In episode number 1286, I told you how to be a person of substance. I still say to this day, even though what I'm explaining is the reality, that you still need to be a person of substance, because eventually people get tired of eating candy. Eventually somebody wants a steak and some broccoli and some mashed potatoes. Eventually people get tired of eating Snickers bars and Skittles. Eventually they're going to need a meal. And if you have substance, then it will come back around to you. You just got to learn how to play the game. Good news is people like me and Work on Your Game University exists, to where I can help people like you who are stepping into this wilderness of entrepreneurship and show you how to make it work. Let's move on to point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is part 2 of our ongoing series, How Journalism Destroyed Itself. Number 6, we have a 24/7 news cycle these days. We used to turn the TV on and off. You turned it on when you got up in the morning, you watched the 6 o'clock news before you went to work. You came home, you watched the 6 o'clock news at night, and you might have watched the 11 o'clock news before you went to sleep. But there was a cycle. We knew what time we needed to be in front of the TV. The Cosby Show was at 8 o'clock. We knew TGIF on ABC started at 7:30, whatever time was. There were certain times you had to be at the TV to see what was happening. These days, now you can watch quote unquote TV anytime you feel like it. It's 24/7. That's good for people who want to be continually entertained and occupied. Some of you listen to this. It's also good for the networks, because now they can advertise all day, which means money is coming in all day. The challenge is, with a 24-hour news cycle, that the priority these days is speed over accuracy, which means journalism, which is about the truth, often gets compromised in pursuit of, let's be the first ones to say something and or put something out, which doesn't necessarily have to be true. The old saying goes that a lie makes its way around the world twice before the truth finishes putting its pants on. Truth usually comes to us slowly. It takes time to think, observe, digest, and process. Lies can be produced very quickly. You can create an AI bot to produce as many lies as you want. This is what happens on social media. There's a lot of propaganda on social media, which is simply material designed to persuade, whether it's based in truth or not. Truth is just truth. There's only one truth. Again, the propaganda, there can be myriad of it. This is the problem for us as consumers. And this is another issue of the journalism industry, because we have access to quote unquote information that may or may not be true, but is available 24 hours a day. It never turns off. It never stops. And the news networks, again, they wanted to compete with this. So guess what they're doing? They're offering news 24 hours a day. Here's a problem. There ain't no news 24 hours a day. So if you're NBC or MSNBC or CNN or Fox, what the hell are you putting out 24 hours a day? It ain't that many interesting things happening 24 hours a day. Same thing with ESPN. It ain't that many interesting things happening all day. So what the hell are you going to do with all that time that you have to now fill in your programming calendar? I'm going to answer that question. Let me tell you what they do. Since there's nothing of substance to report on, they just start focusing on creating news even when there isn't any. I think it was Drake, first person I heard say this in one of his songs. He said, if they don't have a story, they'll make one. That's what they're doing now. All the news networks, all the journalists, that's what they're doing. If there isn't a story, they just make one up. All right, there's nothing in the news to really talk about here today. So let's just make up an argument and talk about this. Is Kobe Bryant really 3 times better than Michael Jordan? Let's debate that. And then they get people on social media talking about it. They just create news out of nowhere. This is a skill, as a matter of fact. I'm admiring this on one end, but I'm trashing it on the other end. It's a skill to actually keep coming up with material when you got to keep filling it every single minute, not even every day, every minute. I put this show out every single day, but understand I'm limiting myself to 20, 30 minutes a day, not 24 hours a day. If I had to talk for 24 hours a day, I'd probably have to start grasping at straws too, coming up with some nonsense just to keep you entertained if I had to do that too. And if I was the only source of material, yeah, that'd be a job. This is what these companies are doing. So the thing today is about creating news, even if there isn't any news, being the first to speak on something, even when you have incomplete and often inaccurate information. Let me be the first one to say something about it so I can credit myself with being first. This is another thing. It only takes a few times for somebody to give you incomplete or inaccurate information before you lose trust in them and you stop listening to anything that they say. And this is what's happened with a lot of networks. You see how this is a big problem for them. How many times over the last 10 years have you noticed a news network telling you something that ended up being a complete lie? Remember the Donald Trump find people hoax, Charlottesville, Virginia? Find people on both sides? Was that it? Was that the truth? No, it was a lie. And the news networks knew that it was a lie, yet they continued to repeat it to the point that presidential nominee, by the time you hear this, we know the outcome, hopefully, Kamala Harris went and said it during a debate with Donald Trump, the find people hoax from Charlottesville. It was not fact-checked, quote-unquote fact-checked by the moderators. They didn't say anything. She just went and repeated the lie. And a bunch of people still believe that lie to this very day. I was doing a live stream just this morning, and I mentioned that, and some people said, well, he did say that. What are you talking about? He didn't say it. Well, in context, he did not say just that. He said more when you get the full context. Again, you're either telling the truth or you're lying. And many of you have been misled by lies, and you don't even realize that you've been lied to. That's the problem. And the reason you don't realize you've been lied to is because you have been conditioned properly to only listen to the platforms to tell you the things that you want to hear. This is what the problem is. I'm explaining to you how the problem, and I'm telling you how it's happening in your own life. So hopefully this is waking some of you up. So how many times have you been told something that ended up being a complete lie, fabrication, definitely not the full scope or full information of a story, and they never came out and admitted, damn, we only told you half the story. Damn, we got it wrong. Damn, we lied. How many times have you heard a news network say that? Exactly, because they don't say it. And if and when they do offer corrections on a story that they got wrong, they put it in a little fine print at the bottom right corner of a newspaper page that you never read. And they say, oh, well, technically we did offer a correction. Yeah, make the correction as loud as the lie. That's what they should do if they were being objective and they had integrity. But you got to understand, people are following the money. Those things go out the window. You got to understand the game here. All right, so hopefully I'm waking some of you up who think that everything that you hear from some mainstream platform or some person in a position of authority, they're telling you the truth because of their job title, because they got a suit on, because they have 20 years in the game. No, they will lie right to your fucking face if it protects their paycheck. And they've been doing it. Now, hopefully some of you have noticed some of these examples I'm pointing out, or you've noticed through the points that I'm giving some examples from your own experience. They're all following the money, folks. This is the game. This is why we no longer trust the mainstream media. It doesn't matter which platform you refer to. All right, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, whatever, all of them do this. None of them is exempt from this. All of them are in on the game. You're the one being played. That said, let's recap today's topic, which is part 2 of our ongoing series, How Journalism Destroyed Itself. Number 4, everybody started leaning heavily to one side and caused the public to pick sides. Every platform started leaning heavily on one side or the other, right or left, Democrat, Republican, etc. And people start doing the exact same thing. So now we have human beings siloed off to certain sides, only hearing what they want to hear. Number 5, it has cannibalized itself. Since everybody can't report fairly anymore because their fans can't bear to hear it, now they have to keep leaning even more to the side that they have chosen. And now you're stuck in that position. Again, you peed in the bed, now you got to lay in the pee. Number 6, 24/7 news cycle. This means you got to keep coming up with news to report even when there's no news. So if there's no news, but you got 24 hours to fill and advertisers to please, guess what? You make up news. This is what they're doing. And so when Donald Trump said fake news, this is what he was referring to. They will make up news just to make sure they're giving you something to keep your dopamine addiction satisfied, and they'll just make up news. And again, there's not really a such thing as fake news or misinformation or malinformation or disinformation or any other bullshit flowery top titles that they come up with. You're either telling the truth or you're lying. That's it. You're telling the truth or you are lying. That's it. And these platforms know exactly what they're doing. Do not be so naive, ladies and gentlemen, as to think that they're doing this by mistake. They know exactly what they're doing. These people are not stupid. All that said, tomorrow we're going to get into part 3 of the series. Make sure between now and then you go to workonyourgameuniversity.com to get to work with me directly. Work on your game. Dre, all